Hello. Welcome to episode 10 of the End of the Beginning podcast. In this episode, we chat about the rewards of conscious parenting, David Bowie's advice to creators, and feeling enough safety for your real self to emerge. We discuss playing life like music. Do we really matter? And making sacred places in your life. We hope you enjoy what you hear, and if you'd like to submit any questions for upcoming episodes, please contact us at theendofthebeginningpodcast@gmail.com. Alternatively, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Instagram. Thanks for listening.
From the outside sitting in, from the outside looking in, I think it's clearly the convergence of all the work you've done on yourself being offered to another human being. It's deeply sacred. From my experience of life, it's relatively rare. It's incredibly powerful. And you're being a wonderful father in that moment. You're a wonderful dad.
Thanks, man.
It's rare to hear that in my experience as well.
It fills me up.
Right.
So I feel like the reward is for me, and it is seeing how relaxed she becomes, how at ease with herself she becomes, and how in love with everything she becomes. That's the reward for me. So that's beautiful that you said that. Thank you. It's really lovely to be seen. And
does it feel irrelevant though?
What
I said? I mean, you're saying thank you, but it feels like you're about to go. But the reward is in watching her bloom into herself.
That's perfectly. That's true. Like it's really. No. I mean, I definitely think there's.
What about the human being?
Yeah. No, I was just about to say. I really think that there's. I feel a deep pride, I guess, at you saying that. There's a proud part of myself of like, wow, I did something good. But then for me, the real, true, deep nourishment, I guess is what I'm trying to say, comes from just seeing her. And then this morning she woke up and she was in such a good mood, and she's kind of bulletproof again. And then she'll go off to school and she'll get her knocks and all that sort of stuff. She'll come home deflated or whatever. She might have a great day at school, and then we start again. But for me, that the really, really beautiful thing was starting to work with the masculine, feminine polarity, starting to learn to be quiet and let it play out from an energetic point of view, not getting drawn in to the drama and to the story. Deep expression of...
Perhaps the fixing?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Which is a masculine quality too.
I think the hug is part of the fixing. It's like, I know this will fix it, but it's being offered passively. Yeah. It's not, I'm going to make you hug me because I know it's good for you.
Because you didn't instigate a hug. You offered one and then held the offering.
Right. Yeah,
and then she refused the offering.
Yeah, she didn't.
That's when you're operating from a being place rather than a doing place.
Yeah.
I'm not going to fix this with doing. In fact, I'm not going to fix this, period. Yeah. That's the primary definition of containment, is there's no fixing in it.
Yeah.
It's amplifying. They often say that the feminine is amplifying, and it certainly is. It's the muse of all things.
Mm-mm.
But the containment is certainly a quickening because it's the absence of resistance. So when you provide that big, vacuous, empty space, it's safety. Safety and the absence of resistance. And so there's a saying, I'm going to say a full yes to you until you're ready to say a full yes to you.
Yeah.
And that's the blooming that you're witnessing. And in the simplest sense, you're just watching your daughter come back to herself. And you're giving her the space to do that.
Yeah.
In lieu of her doing that for herself when she's a bigger person. Yeah. So this is the energy signature of safety. This is the energy signature of welcoming all parts of yourself in. Mirror this, attune to this radio frequency and go be that in the world. And we're looking for autopilotness. We're looking for autonomy. That when they're 17 and a half or something like that is there. It's available. And perhaps most of all, what we're doing is normalizing, making routine, functional self-love.
Yeah.
This is what it looks like to love yourself. We're not yet, there's a doing in it, But we live in a time-space reality where just knowing philosophically you're God's not enough. Life is coming at you. It's diverse and complex and push and pull. It's all over the place. So to be able to sit in it and manage a connection to self is the business of living. And that's the invitation. And yeah, that's, as parents, we're trying to normalize the very best of us so that they copy paste.
Yeah. The other thing to observe that was really interesting was the strong attraction, not physical attraction, but like the strong attraction that she had to just being around me and hanging around me.
Yeah.
She just felt that
She was
safety and she felt that.
magnetized to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, perhaps if you think about actual magnets, there's a dearth of something in her that's represented elsewhere in that moment. And there's the fluctuation of her emotional week that's at play, and then there's also the masc femme thing going on. It's a weird paradox because all of that is within us, and yet we're in a reality where, there are probably beings who've developed their vibrational integration to such a point they can just eat light and sustain their body, but I don't know them, and I've not experienced that. Maybe you could argue in, fasting and you playing with the margins of this stuff, but generally speaking, it's okay to have needs. In a way, you could say we come from an infinite space. Our soul, nature, our divine essence actually is complete and doesn't need any of these things. So much so that it can afford to transpose itself into a human experience where you really, really do have needs, where you really, really are a finite creature. Where if you don't have healthy intimacy, like a really healthy conversation where certain vulnerable parts of you can be welcomed in, there will be a deficit in your system. There's no deficits in a system if you're coming from infinity, if you are only divine essence alone. So I'm describing the intentionality behind the simulation, being willing to to participate in this. But vulnerability is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
And I think some of the evidence of the value of that is what it feels like to be really vulnerable with somebody. So you could hurt me.
It's dangerous.
It's dangerous. But at the other end of the stick, to take that risk.
Yeah. There's no
to be
reward
known
without
by
it.
other and experience yourself being known. And the data that brings to self-knowing is an incredibly joyous experience. Again, the end thing being joy. It's revelry. It's a kind of love when experienced in mid-flight, like in a time-space reality, that's really potent to experience, like an incredible drug to be on or an incredible experience of self. I think I'm alluding to, last week we were talking about, is experience enough? So there's got to be joy in the experience too, which sounds so simple, maybe problematically oversimplified. But it feels resonant to me that the only reason we would desire anything is because ultimately it would bring us some flavor of joy to experience it. The only reason you would want a better relationship or a better financial circumstance or a better relationship with God or a better vocation or what else do people want? I forget. Is because you perceive those things to be an enhancement of joy. And the kind of counter materialism coordinate point that is so present and apparent in spiritual history and in spiritual culture is that, like, we actually want to transcend those desires. And we're revisiting somewhat here, but I would, from my perspective, we want to transcend the parts of us that thinks it'll find primary value in those things. If I get the partner, if I get the car, if I get the job, if I get the recognition from the world, I will finally exist. That's the faux pas. That's the tripping up. That's the inefficient holding. None of that's evil.
Yeah.
But it's not the kind of truth that will liberate us. But if we have a deep connection with self online already, and yeah, there's always the capacity to deepen that, that's the game we're playing, then playing with having a really nice house that accommodates all your, I don't know, functionality. It's got enough space for you to do your things. Maybe you would really love a house with a music studio. So you had a space where you could create. What I often think of with, let's take the house as a metaphorical example and also kind of a literal example of intentional manifestation, that I want a home that's reflective of me. Perhaps more specifically, I can say it better than that. I want a home that's reflective of the best parts of me. I want to feel a deep resonance with the environment I'm in. Like this material creation exists as an extension of me. And in a way, this is where the language maybe gets really nuanced. It's like that actually does enhance my sense of self because I can feel myself in the walls of the house. If you go to places of deliberate spiritual practice, like if you go to a temple or an ashram or even a home or a space of healing, and you can feel, some friends of mine run a center, and you can feel the energy the second you step onto the property. What are we feeling? Apart from just a throwaway esoteric inference that, oh yeah, amazing energy there. What's there? What's actually there? To me, what's there is the people who dwell there more often than not and what they're up to. So the energy they can hold, but also the transformational work that takes place there.
Mm.
We've talked before about the bliss of what it is to provide a container for something to bloom into a larger version of itself. If that's happening there 10 times a day all the time, it starts to osmotically soak into the walls and you can feel it.
Yeah.
And this is how sacred spaces develop. There's a certain feeling in here, in Paul's studio. Part of it, I happened to have been around when he built it, and instantly it's powerful to step into a silent space because the actual structure is silent to protect from outside noises, and that's powerful. But then there is regular growth happening in here. There's regular expression of self happening in here, where people are working themselves into a lather. Can't believe I said that. Where people are, I guess it's working each other into a lather. It's more uncomfortable, isn't it? People are working themselves into some degree of surrender. If the music gets loud, if the music gets right, they push their edges and they pop out into something else. Mm. And there is an ethereal quality to that, but it's the human being doing it. So the human being's cracking open enough to allow more of what's already there to bubble up. Talking the other day, it's a revealing process. We're pulling back deeper and deeper curtains, onion rings, whatever you like. All the metaphors blur into one in the end.
Bowie's got this really good quote.
Bowie.
He's got this really good quote where he's like, he says, creatively, if your feet are on the ground, like if you're out swimming and your feet are on the ground, you're not far enough out. And you need to go just enough farther enough out that you're just not touching the ground. It's like, and that's the spot where you're probably going to do something really good. And I love that. I just think,
oh yeah,
why would you bother otherwise?
If you said that Stevie from the hardware store said that, and they'd be like, wait, who said that? And it'd be like, wow, what a cool thing. Who said that? And you're trying to contextualize it.
Yeah.
The fact that it's Bowie that says it, and Bowie is, because we don't know him personally, but we know the enigma of the idol of that era of music that's David Bowie, like very ethereal on all the levels, actually, even down to the androgynousness and all of that. Like he really transcended humanity in a lot of ways. And you hear him say it, and it feels like that dude is describing something that he experienced a lot, and you could argue he embodied the creative process. He went out there enough that he really understood it and it became part of him. And so, because it's Bowie saying it, it has a different flavour. I feel like I interrupted a little there.
No, not at all. I often have these really weird thoughts too. Like, imagine if David Bowie wasn't famous and he's just some English git.
Yeah.
You kind of just like, oh yeah.
It's
It's a
fine line, it feels like.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea to play with.
Yeah.
Particularly when you look at the fairly faceless guys. Like, I did some work. There's a band called like 10cc, and we were doing a track for an ad.
Isn't 10cc the reggae band that does...
Oh, one of their songs, yeah, we don't like... Oh, was it Dreadlock Holiday?
Dreadlock Holiday.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a massively famous song.
Yeah, and I'm Not in Love as well. It's beautiful.
I'm thinking of...
I'm not in love.
Oh, that's 10cc.
They're quite chameleonic, if that is a word. Like, they just kind of would bounce around. But, yeah, like when you...
Like a chameleon, yeah. Chameleonic.
So doing the gig and having to work with him just a little bit over the phone and stuff, I just kind of went and looked up what he looks like now. And he just looks like some English geezer. But yet he's had this incredible influence on pop culture through his band and through his music in the 70s. And I just, that idea of like normalizing. I remember there's a guy, James Daniels, he was a breakfast radio DJ, used to chat to him. And they used to have famous people coming into the studio and stuff. And it was always really weird for me. And I was the producer, so I could just step back and just let, as long as everything was kind of...
The celebrity starstruckness was weird? Or what was weird?
But yeah, for me it was weird. Yeah, the celebrity kind of like... Because I was very young. I was like 17 or 18 and making this big breakfast show.
And a massive music fan.
And a huge music fan. Sometimes it was just like, Miss Venezuela coming in to talk about yoga or whatever. There's all sorts of stuff, Yeah, I remember James saying, I said to him, it's so weird, like all these people, famous people come in and, how do you not be nervous? And he just goes, we all do poos. That was his thing.
Yeah.
He's just like, whenever I feel nervous, I picture the person sitting on the toilet. We all do poos, Paul.
That's
all
awesome.
do poos. And I've never forgotten it, really. It's a good piece of advice.
Yeah. Well, I often think about holding is a verb that might fit, but if you can see through the celebrity layer, like radiance, we might have talked about this before, but like, I think we have, right? We're talking about if a supermodel walks in the room and if you're a hetero dude, you're quite struck by and maybe overwhelmed, and it can become quite an uncomfortable experience for perhaps both parties. But if you've got the capacity to sit in it, and we can talk about why one would have the capacity versus why one would not. But if you've got the capacity to sit in that, the brightness, the volumes up loud, the radiance of that, like if somebody's a celebrity, because they're not all supermodel good looking. But let's say we're talking about an aesthetic, and it's intimidating in a way. But if you've got some sort of anchoring in yourself where you can coexist with that intimidation, or it's not deliberate, I'm not applying that, but it's in intensity or something, a bright lightness, and you can actually coexist with it and hold it, then you can see the person behind it, and that person actually gets to exist. So I imagine, it's sort of referenced with some regularity that while some maybe celebrity level people would like to be treated with deference, there's probably a lot that would like to feel like they could be human.
Yeah,
and be regular, where people could just meet them.
I think a lot of people disappear.
And go, you do poos. We've both got a colon.
Yeah. I think
see them.
I think a lot of people, high profile people, they go to places where they're not recognized and they really enjoy it.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking of too.
Yeah.
They disappear into Venezuela. That's the second mention for the day.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a friend who's a well-known kind of TV guy in New Zealand. He's kind of like everyone's big brother. He ran a show after school, and so a lot of people know him, and just a really genuinely beautiful human being. And you hang with him and that aura kind of seeps out of him, and then you see how beautifully he has affected everybody through the show. He handles it with such grace, but there are times where I'm sure he's just like, just get me, if I could snap my fingers and get out of this. We've been in line. Have I told you the story? Like, we're in line at like Harvey Norman getting something, and people want to like pull him out to the parking lot. Their kids out there, and they're a huge fan, and he's like, yep,
because it's current. He's still doing. Is he
he's
that
not
to
like
a
on the
current
project.
generation?
He's like a guest on the project, and he's like, you know what I mean? He's like that kind of stuff. He's not doing
national
his
treasure.
Yeah, a little bit, but I imagine, like that would wear thin, really.
To dilute his humanity. Well, it becomes a service to other all the time. It's like I play this role, and this role's yielded me certain resources and certain experiences and how beautiful, but I'm not it. It's a thing that I play, and if you require, it then starts to use you or something. If you require me to play this role for your benefit, it's like, well, with humility and gratitude for it, I'll do it. And you see that a lot where people just would never refuse a signature, and it's not a space I know anything about. Like I think about, you'd have to live that to know that.
Yeah.
Because some will go, no, I'm not. Like Dylan, for example, like it's
complete rejection.
Withdrawal. So I don't know you anything.
Yeah.
But that could come down to from the outside looking in, there's always been an intuition about him it's a lot of neurological intensity to coexist with.
Totally.
So probably neurodivergence is a part of that picture, but a lot of compassion for the no that's said there as well, because there's a human being there. It's like, well, what if you were just a being who could not help but make music, and it led to all these wonderful and uncomfortable consequences? I could be describing any human experience. Yeah. Celebrity notwithstanding.
It's interesting, like staying on the Dylan thing, I think it's fascinating to watch the early interviews where he's still bright and fresh and cheeky, and, very much you can still see that he's there in there. Yeah. And then just as the celebrity culture seems to just eat him a bit more and more, he just gets done with it. And there's just the drag on it. Having spoken to friends that tour a lot, there is a relentless monotony to it,
Wow.
And I think that it doesn't matter who you are, getting on the bus to tour, getting on the plane, even, like, there is a mundanity about it, the normalization of this extraordinary thing you're doing. But like anything, if you go to the moon, this is your 70th time on the moon, you'd be like, it's my old mate, the moon. You know what I mean? Like, the familiarity kind
Tuesday.
You just see him kind of go into the, I don't want to do this part of it anymore. Still wants to make the music, still wants to kind of, but just doesn't.
But then almost being brave enough to going, and I'm not going to.
Yeah,
I'm going to see if I can do it my way.
What's fascinating to me now is, like, is that even possible now with social media? Like, we're so tight in our attention span. Back then Bob could disappear. I mean, we used to have 2-3 year cycles between albums. It's like that's tightening and tightening and tightening now, because all the algorithms want you to release something every 6 weeks. Yeah. And I wonder, like, Adele's done it, I guess. She's like, all right, Matt, see you later. And, I'm sure if she comes back with an album in 5 years, it'll be enormous.
Oh, yeah. Just this morning, we reference manifestation in the pod, and I suppose it's an inference that it's real and that it's a worthy pursuit. And then you hear from people from different spaces, spiritual or otherwise, that are like, that's dangerous levels of material indulgence, and even respectable voices. There's an interesting thing if you're listening to a voice that you respect, maybe you've even been vulnerable with because it's tapped into something. And then you hear it contradict later on. I hope that makes sense. That's quite a vivid experience for me, where you form some sort of trust bond with some voice, with they're a human being, flesh and blood with you, or perhaps a resource online, which is so prevalent these days. And then you sort of forge a trust and a vulnerability and an openness and a relaxing with that resource, with that voice. And then 6 months later, you hear it say something that's in contradiction. Either you've grown, or it's saying something in another space about something else. Yeah. So this happened with me this morning, and I'm you could say consulting with this resource that really does crack me open, and then it's like, but manifestation is a dangerous new age cult or something like that. And it's like, okay, so this is where the invitation is to fall into your relationship with self, is to test the steadiness of your relationship with self. Because you sit in enough of those moments and you're like, well, I've lost no love for that resource, for that voice. It's forcing me, though, into a more authentic dynamic, because it doesn't exist just as something singular, one dimension. It's a complex creature. Perhaps that all of that is a metaphor for human relationship, because you find the more you open to another being, you find stuff that isn't easy, that is apparently contradictory. Dissonance, non-resonance, something. Yeah. And I can feel a beauty in real time, like right now, in what it is to allow a contradictory holding of that. I think it's necessitated because the world is complex. There are friends of mine coming from a background of institutionalized spirituality who have given that away completely, but are still beautiful people, who have moved more deeply into it, who are still beautiful people, and are floating around somewhere in the middle. And I'd probably identify as someone floating around in the middle. But they're challenging in their ways. How do you hold true to that? And sometimes holding true to that looks like having less of them in your life.
I feel like you're being challenged. Like how much discernment do you have? How clear are you listening to your inner voice about how valuable this information is?
Yeah.
As you pointed out, like there's so much information online, and I think there's a little bit of
contradiction's inevitable, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, like I have a couple of friends who they listen to a lot of stuff, and I think all it does is just confuse them.
Yeah.
Because there's too many seemingly this is the way kind of ideologies. And I guess for me, that's where the discernment thing, it's like what resonates and what really kind of fills you with joy and what really kind of uplifts you. It feels like that when I read a book, I'm not consciously trying to take all the information in. I'm literally I'm reading and then kind of letting it wash over me. And there are pieces that stick to me, and it feels like they're the relevant pieces for me to imbibe and to remember, you know?
Just giving
And
yourself
I think it's important
permission.
to be challenged. Really important. And it's uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable to be challenged. But I think it's so valuable.
Yeah.
Because then you get to find out, where are you? Where are you in all of this? All of these ideas and all of these... I mean, we've all picked up stuff that doesn't work for us and tried to make it, I'm going to wear this shirt. And it's like, dude, that's like 4 sizes too big for you, bro.
Yeah.
Yes, but this is my new style. And you're like, it just doesn't... And you take it off in a couple of weeks and think, what was I thinking? But I think, I think it's great. That's why I kind of love like really strong friendships where you can hold opposing ideas. And even after you've had a discussion, presenting very strongly both sides of the argument, neither person is convinced of the other person's argument, and you can still be friends. It's like, that's a friendship.
Yeah.
Because there's respect and passion for both your and their perspective of the world.
It authenticates their sovereignty.
Yeah.
So it's like the friend worth having is the one that's an authentic human being. They're true to themselves. They can actually bring value. And if they're agreeing and complying all the time, it's the same as if they're being contradictory just to be contradictory. Because they're agitating you for the sake of agitation rather than something authentic.
And we all have friends that do that too.
Yeah. You can feel the discomfort in their own system.
Or sometimes they're just having fun.
Both of them are quite characterised by unsafety, it feels like. I don't feel safe enough to actually explore this with you, to explore what is true.
Yeah.
The archetype I think of is a person who's finding what's wrong all the time.
Right.
Because if I can keep the wolves the wolves under torchlight, I can keep the threats captured with exposure kind of thing. You're giving all your focus to the things that terrify you. Yeah. And there's the distinct absence of working with the vulnerability. It's not meeting challenges. It's actually just living. Well, grievance looking for a cause, but...
Is it victimhood? Like, are they trapped in victimization through fear?
Yeah, I think so.
Paralysis?
I think that fits anyway. I mean, we're playing around with a hypothetical person.
Yeah.
I guess we'd speak perhaps pitching more to the quality or the tendency to identify criticism, what's wrong, what's threatening in every space you walk into, so that, well, you could call it wrong making as well. If I can make this wrong, then no one can make me wrong, because the stage has been filled.
Yeah.
The space of discernment is, we're already bastardizing this thing over there.
What's the seed of that, do you think? Do you have a take on the seed of like how that gets in? And takes hold? Because no one's born like
There
that.
probably is patterns where it's a very similar flavour of trauma that, well, I mean, trauma, if that's a satisfactory answer. So why is someone living from needing to flag what's wrong in the world? Then you never have to let the part out.
That could do something about it.
Sure, that could be strong, but also be vulnerable. So all the purpose of human creation, human relating, is to be able to feel enough safety that the real you could emerge and the real them could emerge, and you could have a beautiful dance. Maybe it is like looking at infants play, when kids finally work out there's other kids in the world and they want to play with each other. Maybe at 2, 3, 4 kind of thing, when they're a bit over their parents a bit more and really thrilled when you watch little kids discover other little kids, perhaps especially when they're like a year older and they're like demigods to them. Like they can't get enough of slightly older kids because of what they're up to. Yeah, so speaking about referencing that as a metaphor, if you can make things a threat all the time, identify that everything is dangerous, then you validate your decision not to let your own vulnerability out of the playpen. Yeah. And so you never risk getting hurt. And so ironically, in an attempt to make things safer, you've made everything dangerous. And the world becomes an offensive environment. It's probably worth adding that the world can be offensive. The world can be dangerous. And so these faculties of discernment, sensitivity, and self-protection are really, really healthy and important. And actually an example of self-empowerment. It's like saying a healthy no. But when way out of balance, you're saying no to everything. It's akin to death, I guess. But there's a bit of momentum now in that space pushing back, saying there is no narcissism. Focus on what's in you. And it's one of those ones where the invitation is to hold it. It's like, of course, from the spiritual perspective, everything is welcome. There are no perpetrators. There are no victims. And yet, in order to interface with these things in a real way, we've got to meet the suffering in the being. Some of it is from a position of vulnerability, my sovereignty was squashed. And I gave it away. Yeah. From a spiritual point of view. But from a human point of view, I was too young to know better. And it's kind of like, does predation, the capacity to be a predator, does it actually exist? And from a spiritual point of view, no. And from another point of view, yes, our behavior does have consequence for human beings. And it is in our interest to look at what part of us is driving the bus. So it's this sort of like, if we dial up our expansion into the spiritual perspective, no, there are no perpetrators, and it's only us interfacing with us. But we do run the risk of bypass and leaving part of our human wounding out in the cold. I've not mastered this. I've probably not mastered anything, but indeed I haven't mastered anything. This is an area of frontier for me still, like to my surprise or something. That if you dial out the expansion, you can become quite intoxicated. And it's...
In the humanity?
What do you mean?
Like if you dial out the expansion of self, you mean? You then focus in on just being the human and you find that? No,
I mean in the other sense. So for me, I think about institutional spirituality and it can be so intoxicating. It is so intoxicating. It's God intoxicating. And you can experience it through ecstatic kirtan and modalities like that. And Bhakti is a really intense way of doing it, but you can experience it through wisdom, through sitting with wisdom and letting it run through you and finding the parts of you that are resonant with it and letting them expand and essentially discovering your divine nature and letting it expand out. Part of my life, what's arisen is like the experience of there can be nothing wrong with that. And then realizing that in a way there is something wrong with that. For me, I dialed that right out in younger years, and then felt so resourced from the divine that I stopped taking care of aspects of myself.
Of your human self.
Yeah. And yet when we talk about manifestation, if you get the vibration right, things tend to be attracted and come to you anyway, and you tend to find all the provisioning you need. There is some balance between, this is like the best I've got, is being fully online humanistically and fully online spiritually. How do I take care of both and honour both? And there's a bit of a dance, because some phases are really expansive and then some are more contracted into your humanity and deeply feeling orientated and trying to work this out. So you could dial up your experience of God intoxication, get all your resourcing from there, and be kind of oblivious to the fact that your nervous system is radically depleted, that you're not taking care of your worldly business very well. And yet I also don't, you go the other way and things become very dry and mundane. It's like the world's a hard place. You're here to grind to get as much as you can, and the 1% are going to take it off you anyway, so you're probably fucked, but there's no choice but to grind and grind and grind and grind. And that's quite repellent too. There is a middle ground. I think if I had a method to offer people of how to do that perfectly, it'd probably be irresistible to offer, but I don't. It's so nuanced and fluid. And if there is an invitation, it's to move into as much authenticity and presence as you possibly can so you can be with it, which looks like life brings you a certain flavour of moment. What does your day look like today? What's going on in your inner world right now? Attending to your nervous system. How do I feel when I'm relating in this way? One of the ripples of, one of the consequences, one of the observations from being really God intoxicated is when intuition does come up and go, that's weird that that's happening. But you'd probably have to push away some of that God intoxication, that incredible heart expansion and love, in order to honour that discernment. Like if you're in a really exalted space and it's an incredibly beautiful feeling, and then something really weird happens, you're almost whitewashed with the heroin of expansion.
Yeah, you're like...
To honour that intuition of like, I'm actually not remotely okay with what just happened. So what's that other voice? And you could argue it's a deep and ethereal and divine intuition, and it would be. But it's also kind of like, you could say your feminine parts wanting to protect the finite, saying, no, this isn't safe, this isn't okay. So we can become too dense and we can become too ethereal. And finding the right amount in order not to lose touch with the other is the dance. And I'm still very much working through this.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a kind of ultimate goal vibes to me.
Yeah, and then whether an ultimate goal is realisable.
Is it even possible?
Yeah, well, if we're in duality, then we're always wiggling. And part of the dichotomy of people offering anything from a spiritual space is that 99% of the time in my experience, we're talking about as if that work has been done by that person.
Haven't they abandoned the human mystic part, other than it's holding the spirit here, and then the spirit gets to express in this space, but it has no attachment to the physical at all?
That is an archetype of enlightenment.
So it's not really...
But most of the people you're listening to aren't claiming to be conventionally enlightened, right? Like most of the modern sages, if you like, that come out of the West mostly. Very few are claiming to be conventionally enlightened. Usually that comes from a Buddhist or a Hindu backdrop. Yeah. How much vulnerability is actually healthy in a dialogue like this? Because most of the spiritual dialogue that I see is either dialed down so it's more mundane and human, or dialed up, but it's spoken about into the spiritual, but it's spoken about, these are the truths. This is scripture. Take this, see if it's resonant with you. It's not prophesizing or
prescriptive.
Yeah, I guess it's offering it as a prescription though. It's not suggesting there's a right or wrong. But what I feel is that we're talking here from a space of actually being incomplete processes. The job ain't done. And we're in the middle of it. And in a way that's more appealing, but maybe it's more volatile. And
Yeah. It's weird. It's weird. I don't know what the part of me is, but my instant thing was, where's the value in that? Like, where's the value in hearing other people's confusion and other people's stumbling? Another, like...
It's about to hear a flat line sound.
Yeah.
That was episode 10.
Yeah, we'll be off. We'll be off.
The final season.
We'll be back after these messages. Yeah, is it... I mean, I guess there's familiarity and there's like comfort in hearing other people stumbling around in the dark and just throwing up ideas that they've, kind of had the fortune to interact with. And I don't know. Not that there has to be. Who's saying? I mean, it's such a internal, personal thing.
Yeah.
What gives value to something? One person has no value to another, et cetera, et cetera. It's fascinating.
I just figured that if you can speak transparently about what you're moving through, you humanize yourself and you authenticate the fact that we're all like this. We're all working through this, whether you're 10 minutes into some, more spiritual orientated life, or you're multiple decades into it, maybe 50 years plus or something. There still is the process. And yet it also feels available that what people are usually talking about is something they've traversed and maybe not mastered, because nothing's ever really complete, but they've really have crossed their thresholds, integrated and embodied, and now they're ready to talk about it. Maybe it ain't broke. Maybe that's why it works that way.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think if you can trust in the system of what's naturally here for you without impeding it, at least for me, that's what's continued to allow me to stay open and stay curious. Like, as soon as you shut that down with negativity, or you shut it down with, oh, that's bullshit. I spend a lot of my time doing that. Like, there's a very strong part of me that loves the idea of expansion and, reading. I remember reading Conversations with God, and I was like, wow, this is a really amazing idea. And then, Ramtha books and all sorts of stuff. And while reading the book, it's so expansive and exciting, and then kind of finish the book, and a couple of weeks later, but it's all bullshit though. Like, there's part of me that's quite fiercely scientific and method driven, and wants evidence, and but I think
you can see how
if you can stay open to it,
the relationship between the two of those things create a process arc.
Yeah.
That one kind of lulls the other into openness, but the other one grounds it into credibility. It's like but perhaps they do need to love each other in order to be open to that process. So the kind of more orthodox right or wrong discerner, the scientific brain, sees the value in challenging ideas with expansive.
Well, that's the discernment for me.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you are a vessel full of everybody else's ideas.
Which one is? The hardcore science guy or the ethereal one?
No, the ethereal one. No, both, actually.
Because all things are true.
No, because there are many ways to get to where you're trying to get to. Everyone, like, everybody's journey is different. And so when everybody talks about their journey, they have a different way of explaining it, or they got there a different way, or not get there, but they're traveling a different way, Everyone has a different kind of, and everyone's seemingly trying to head to the same destination, which is expansion and the throwing off of, the shackles that you've created for yourself.
Yeah, liberation.
Liberation, yeah. But I think also the dogma can be the same too. Like the scientific dogma can be the same. You can have too many ideas about the concrete what is, like we've just been through that trust the science thing, and the idea that science is fixed, and it's not. And one of the things I really love is that some of the modern particle physics and things are starting to kind of converge with both Eastern and Western philosophy. The Eastern philosophy feels more like a louder voice in my life. But, the quantum field, background, the singularity, the isness, Godhead, the one, the divergent, like all of it's all starting to kind of point to, whether it's the double slit experiment, slit experiment, consciousness changes the outcome of particles.
Yeah.
It's like, they've been talking about, they explained this differently 5,000 years ago when they were talking about, it's kind of interesting.
How cute.
Yeah. Well, yes and no, I guess. Like, I guess what I really love is the idea that the two may marry at some stage.
Yeah.
And that no matter what, they both lead to the same conclusion. That you are consciousness and your vessel is the receiver for that consciousness.
But isn't it fascinating that we each want to be different things?
Yeah.
Yes, there's overlap, and that's fun because we can relate, but this is the essence of, to me, that's like the uniqueness of each soul is apparent, and it's communicated perhaps most clearly through desire. So when you hear what a person has really wanted and been able to create or not, and what they really want to create right now, doesn't it make sense that part of who we are is expressed by what we want? You and I have much in common, but we want different things in life in different ways.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. As if God split itself into 8 billion different artists that could all come down and paint a beautiful picture. And they're all different because the artists themselves are different. What they're drawn to, what they want to express, how they want to. There's no way around it, right? Like if we're looking at it through this lens, holding it this way, the paint that dries on that canvas can't not be of an extension of them, be a version of them. It's them in a way on the art. I was saying about the house before, like our houses, our homes end up reflections of us.
Going back to what you were talking about before, I feel like that's the perfect recipe, isn't it, for the exploration of infinity, is to have, because what we're talking about is not chaos, but random, like so many random experience generators, basically. And then those two meet, and then they come together, and then they have a child or children.
Random experience generators, yeah. So their own randomity is being cocktail mixed together.
Of their childhood and their things. I mean, it's got to start somewhere, so I'm just picking two people randomly. And then all of their experiences and their ideas and their philosophies and their quirks and their fuck-ups and their everything, they pour into that child. And then that child takes that, and that's them now. And then their random experience generator, which is them, meets a completely different one that's had a completely different child, completely different, but there is something resonant, and there is something that they're drawn together, whatever it is, could just be pheromones, and they make another child, and then and your sound, that sounds like the exploration of infinity. That sounds like the perfect continued expansion of infinity, if you ask me.
Yeah.
As long as it's sustainable. It's, if it starts collapsing in on itself, obviously it's not an exploration of infinity, but do you know what I mean? Like, I
think so. So I'm curious, what do you feel in your system right now? Is there an intellectual approval of this concept, or is it more felt in your heart or somewhere else?
Probably both. There's definitely a innate wisdom and truth that feels like. There's a deep reverence for the perfection of it. And then there's also the intellectualization of like, far out, that's really clever, that's really smart, isn't it? It's very beyond.
Maybe.
But how simple it is.
That's what we were talking about before, about the union and merger between your smarty pants mind that demands satiation and your, boundless heart that wants to open to all things. In the Tolkien universe, something my kids and I talk about a lot.
Yeah,
it was
you
my older
it,
child, and now she's kind of grown out of it, and then my younger child's growing into it.
Even with that giant Lego castle you bought her.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's two. There's Rivendell and there's Baradur, Khazad-dûm. Well, there's like 6-page songs that one character will just spontaneously burst into. And you could read through it, but you might as well sing. And it's hard actually to add melody to a song you don't know. So I add melodies, but then I want to mix up the melodies for the kids. And
in my head right now, you've got a lute and you've got leather clothing on. And
the gears turn for 1,000 years. The gears could turn to war. Do you know the reference?
No, but that's literally how I was thinking about it.
That's Gearhead from some reason he's doing like a bard thing.
Oh, funny.
Yeah.
So good.
The idea is that Tolkien's not writing a story, he's writing a lost mythology for the Celts. So that the Norse mythology is really rich, the Egyptian, the mythology, Mesopotamia, whatever, all these different spaces have these beautiful stories that are mythological. Different things are possible in those realms. And so the elves and the dwarves and so you can feel so much of his heart in it, in the authenticity of wanting to create full characters with full histories and full languages, and it's full nerd out, but it's pretty amazing. Anyway, the origin story of it all is there's God, which is Iluvatar, who's defined by creativity itself and is utterly formless. The way the universe was created was through song. So the Big Bang is song. And that probably does come from other mythologies. Like, like the rainbow serpent movement created the undulations of the land and created the whole universe. It's song that does it. And it's all light and it's all angelic, and all the gods, who are actually the first beings of form, acquire singers kind of thing. They join in and they're additive, but they're subordinate. And then one goes, well, I want to be as powerful as Dad. I want to be as powerful as the main God. Consciousness itself. I want to be able to do all the things. And so he wants to create, but he wants it to be his signature. So he creates dark sounds. He creates dun, 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 like ugliness and violence. And everyone goes, oh, what are you doing, bro? Like, just join the team. Flow with the momentum. He's like, I am not you guys. I'm way bigger and more important than you guys. So it's like this tones of arrogance and egotism and separation and higher than and all this stuff. But what Iluvatar says, goes and makes another song to mix in with it. So doesn't decapitate him, allows him to do it. He says, like, my son, you can make a bigger and bigger ruckus. You can make more and more agitating, dark sounds, and all you will do is tease out a more complex and elegant counterbalancing symphony from me. You cannot out-evil God. You will simply draw out a more majestic song through that disposition towards hurt and violence.
Beautiful idea, isn't it?
It is. And again, if we come back to that sort of moment of introspection before, like a beautiful idea or a resonance with something that you are. Is this something you feel in your chest, or is it something you think in your mind? And what you said before was, well, it's actually both. That I love that idea because of the deep wisdom in it, and I can feel a heart opening towards it, which would be a resonance and a being thing, like a self thing. Yeah, so then all the actual stories play out with that as a backdrop. That you're like, okay, there is evil and we do want to extinguish it because we want life to proliferate and reach its full potential. But there's a grander song in the background that it is this evil, in inverted commas, that is enhancing the symphonic masterpiece of all of this. Interesting, right? Because I just pitched it's poetic and it's beautiful, and we were just talking before about we don't want to dial out the perspective so much that we forget to human, and we forget that we do have edges and we do have needs. And so in the Bhagavad Gita, one of the sacred texts of Hinduism, there's Arjuna has to go to war, and he doesn't want to go to war. It's like, I'm a peaceful being. And there's Krishna on his shoulder, who I think reveals himself as Krishna at some point. I'm a little hazy on the storytelling details of it. But the suggestion is you must live the life, but in your hands. You hold the personhood that you find yourself in the middle of it. You work with what's there. You live your life. And in this moment, he has to go to war. There's no choice. They're coming at him, kind of things. But I'm not a warlike creature. And it's like, and yet here we are. It's like finding yourself in the middle of a conflict, finding yourself in the middle of a divorce and go, I'm not conflict orientated. It's like, you're about to be cracked right open, my love. And the purpose is for you to create a larger vessel to hold more of yourself. The purpose is for you to find sleepy places and awaken them. Inversely, coming back to what we were saying before, the purpose is to shed layers that might be super glued on a bit. The whack of karma, the whack of things playing out. Yeah. So like the complexity of the symphony, and maybe there's an invitation to faith in that. But maybe it is blind in some moments where we're really lost and we just go, I'm just going to trust love and a walk on the beach and a daily meditation because I'm so fucked. I'm just going to trust what makes sense and what's worked before. I'm not actually following the thread of the divine compass right now. I'm not sure that I'm on track. So I'm going to fall into the safe arms of a friend or a family member for a little moment and maybe listen. It does make sense in terms of duality and contrast that moments of fierce lostness enhance and clarify, and even that elastic band pulling you down and launching you up into what it is to be found, what it is, which I think is akin to being sovereign, finding self and finding direction again. And the other flavor of the other face of that dice might be union, because lostness is akin to connection, perhaps in its inversion, and lostness akin to sovereignty as far as knowing who I am and where I'm headed.
I feel like there's this little idea just playing right on the tip of my brain.
Brain tip.
Yeah, I was going to say tip of my tongue, but it's not. Yeah, the music thing that you said earlier was really interesting. I mean, obviously my brain resonates with that idea.
Do you mean you're familiar with music, or you identify with music?
No. Because you're explaining the concept via the darkness and the, it actually just amplifying the grander, It's, for me, like that rings so true. If you look at an orchestra and you look at the darker instruments and the instruments that are used to create a more, deeper, not deeper, maybe just darker tones and stuff. Like I think of brass when I think of
oboe.
That's more woodwinds and stuff. For me, they're more whimsical, and like brass is kind of like, think of like Star Wars, the dark.
What actual instrument is doing that?
That's probably bones, I think. Trombones. I mean, that's the whole brass section, because you have the trumpets and stuff at the top. But
there's a reed in an oboe. Is that why it's
correct?
Okay.
Yeah. They're more whimsical. They're kind of like the more
tooty.
Yeah, more kind of They get used less and less. Anyway,
tootless.
Yeah, like the idea of just a string orchestra is incredibly beautiful, but the power of brass and the contrast of brass against strings, and yes, of course, percussion and woodwinds and stuff, but just using those two extreme parts of the orchestra is like that. The thing that's kind of the on the tip of my brain part of it is like, I see the idea of the entire performance. So then you can extrapolate that out to the entire experience of being alive. Is that there are greater possibilities available to you because there is the brass section. So there are greater experiences available to you because there is darkness.
Yeah.
And because there is, and so therefore, and you even have this experience. I saw a reel yesterday where a woman had kind of fallen asleep during a really quiet part of a orchestral thing, and then the brass hits, and you hear her go, "Ah!" in the audience, and then everyone starts laughing. Like she's fallen asleep, and then she's woken up and frightened. But the idea that such dynamic can be drawn because they are there, because they are so loud,
Yeah.
because they are so forceful. Like the dynamic is not available just through strings.
Isn't it? I mean,
So it's so fascinating.
I was thinking about and they're different too. So where does that land in the reality of
living and life? And
well, it's an invitation to open up to living. It's obvious in what you're saying.
Yeah.
But also that part of living well is to meet things as they are, that some things are kind of inherently threatening. You could say that like having the full experience of trombones, of the deeper end of bass or an extreme, you might say, is to meet it as it is. Like go and have an experience of a crocodile in a zoo and then go and have an experience of a crocodile on the riverbank. And they are very different primal experiences.
Yeah.
Once you train your brain to realize it's a zoo, it'll be like, wow, let's look, kids will squeal, they'll have a great time. It's inherently family orientated and G-rated, a zoo or something similar. Whereas if you go to these animals in the wild, crocodile's such a convenient Australian example because they are death itself. At least in my limited experience of them, they're probably much more wonderful and multi-layered. But if you don't put your children near the riverbank,
No.
like that's insanity.
Yeah.
Because they look like little wallabies and it's over or something. Something like you meet the music where it is. Those instruments are played differently. To get the most out of them, you adjust the way you relate to them.
Yeah.
So it's like, I want to let all the experiences of life in, but in order to let in the experiences of dangerousness, you meet it exactly as it is. This is nuanced. It's like from a overly simplified spiritual perspective, it's like, I'm going to work with this, I'm going to let this in. It's like, great. But as the journey complexifies, letting in the experience of human conflict might look like boundary setting and might look like saying goodbye and might look like saying an emphatic no and might look like locking your door. And, so I meet the energy signature of this thing. In order to welcome it in, I must honor it as it is. In order to honor it as it is, I've got to honor myself as I am in relationship to it. And none of that's a no. It's, I guess conveniently we could turn this into, it's an inner yes. Manifest that the true inner yes looks like an outer no. This is a convenient interlacing or meeting of being fully online humanistically. Because if I was to, and spiritually at once, for if I was to say an inner yes and an outer yes, I'm being eaten alive again.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but it's God. It's all an experience of God. It's okay. But it's like part of the experience of God. I mean, I'm back to the Tolkien thing. Melkor, Morgoth, the big bad, he's not a nice guy. He is the epitome of horror. He does all the horrible things all the time, from outright violence to manipulation and masquerading as something beautiful. The darkness is real. The darkness is real. It doesn't belong to the other place. Meeting the darkness in authenticity is an exquisite divine act. Rather than we want to see the God in perpetrators. And there's a deeper nuance, I think, in seeing the God in our own humanity as well. I'm not the victim of this story, but I want to fully live this story. Because to meet life is to meet myself, is to meet God, is to be really in this. And so I've got to let it percolate through my system. Fully online humanistically, fully online spiritually. Because it'd be a form of some sort of bypass to just go, I'm going to welcome, I love this. I want to love this thing. It's like to
death
love
and
it
violence
is
into
to
my
recognize,
house. Yeah.
But death and violence manifests as emotional violence sometimes.
Yeah.
What's emerging from the psychological space or the maybe psychiatric or maybe neurological is that the brain can't tell the difference between emotional violence and physical violence. I'm not an expert in this space, but what I've experienced in my own life would attest to that. And what I've absorbed from people who do devote their life to the science of this neuro stuff, there's a consistency there, at least there's some overlap in that, like the difference between pleasure and pain, there's a subtle variant in the nervous system.
But relationship nonetheless.
And hot and cold, there's a subtle variance between these things. That's a fascinating little sphere all unto itself. But, saying an inner yes to the experience of emotional violence and it manifesting as an outer no, which might look like a boundary, So as best as I can tell, this is deeply unsafe and manipulative and representing as a crocodile in the water. And I'm going to say, in order to say yes to my life, I'm saying no to this. I think that I'm talking around a bit of a dangerous spiritual oversight, which is saying yes inside and on the outside. I want to work with this. I want to let it in and grow. It's like the growth is in seeing it as it is.
Yeah.
This being is in a position where they know no different than to take, manipulate, be emotionally violent. And loving them well is accepting where they are. Alternately, it's a little bit like pretending things are better than they are. And if somebody's coming from that kind of manipulative place, you can be giving heroin to a junkie and making their problem worse. And that's
Enabling,
not love.
yeah.
You're an enabler. It might look like cuddles,
Yeah.
but cuddles aren't always the answer. I'm glad we got there, actually. That feels like a right moment to tackle that stuff.
Yeah. And I think too, what it comes to me as is playing life. You're playing life. You're not, a victim of it. You're not traveling with it. You're not trying to absorb all of it. You're not trying to be above it. You're in it, playing it. And that's where your desires, needs and wants are part of it.
Yeah.
And you have to play that accordingly.
Yeah.
Because otherwise your needs, wants and desires, and they're gone.
Yeah.
And that's the bypass, isn't it?
I think so.
Because you're not playing to your truth. You're not living your truth. You're living an idea of what you think you should be rather than where you actually are.
Yeah. And a way to work out where you actually are is attunement to the vessel you find yourself inside of. Some of this stuff is bodily. You don't put your hand on the stove. These things are quite obvious. We talk about...
But not to a baby, for example.
Yeah.
To someone learned in this dimension, it is. Yeah, learned. Jesus.
So there's a nuance there, and it's okay to screw this up. We're doing it all the time. It's okay, I want to say yes to life, but I'm fumbling with how to say a clear no or a clear yes to whatever this kind of thing is.
Well, it's about, to me, you're talking about acceptance. And
Say more?
Well, just because the thing that is, let's say, negative or dark or whatever, you're acknowledging its existence. You're acknowledging and perhaps even understanding its purpose in existence. Yet you are not making it part of your existence necessarily, if that's not what is in line with you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What I hear in between the words, perhaps, is you're realizing its full potential, which is meeting it fully.
Well, it's trying to show you where one of the edges of the polarity is in this existence.
Yeah.
That's its purpose. Is to go, the edge is all the way over here in bloody violence and rape and torture and all other sort of...
Or emotional equivalents that are way, way grayer.
Sure.
Sorry, just to harp on that. Yeah.
No, sure.
Because they're such easy pickings, like rape and murder and Pol Pot and Stalin. It's obviously convenient. But it's like, what about those elements in us? And you and I don't pick up weapons and lash out, but we're capable of that, but we're capable of falling asleep in moments and tones of emotional violence, like not attending to our children's needs in a moment because we're caught up in whatever else. And that's not evil. Yeah. But forgetful is forgetful is forgetful. We've talked about this person's only acting from pain. It's like, yeah, prisons are filled with people acting from pain. They deserve rehabilitation and love.
Yeah.
But they can only be
But they have to choose it.
They have to choose it. They have to be ready for it, to participate in it.
Yeah.
So you might go and work in a prison system, but you're probably not going to have those half dozen dudes over for a barbecue on a Sunday afternoon in the same way with your family and your kids and your wife or whatever. And that's not a moral decision either. It's if the capacity to love themselves into yielding their own violence that process hasn't taken place and been realized yet, then you don't expose them to precious and fragile things that are safe.
Yeah.
That's fierce. I'm describing something fierce because it sounds like the rejection of other people's humanity. But
I don't know, in a way it sounds like the responsible management of, the apt positioning of things within a social structure.
Yeah. It sounds like the maturity of love. We're not diminishing any love here, but we're more participatory in the process as it is to the best that we can be. I spent a long time in the paramedical field, and you're exposed to some strange things. You're exposed to to some really polarized,
Weird
crisis-orientated moments.
Human moments.
Yeah. And so someone that I was close with once upon a time worked in pediatric emergency. And so it was really hard to hold the reality of what safe childhood looks like for that cohort.
Wow.
Because if they're one of the better, in this example, pediatric hospitals in the world, then the sicker the kid, the more likely they are to gravitate to that clinical
place.
institution.
Yeah.
And so things are radically overrepresented.
Of course.
Similarly, if a kid grows up as the child of a billionaire and wants for nothing,
everything's padded.
There's all sorts of consequences that we might jump to or include in the dialogue. Part of it is wealth is presumed.
Yeah.
So they're going to presume abundance. And the invitation would be like, oh, well, you'll never really value money. That might be a real thing. The real world will happen one day and you'll have to earn it, and that'll be a horrible thing. That's a much more common blue-collar perspective. For me, we tend to normalize whatever vibration we're around, just like we were saying about our children. If they normalize self-love because we've created an umbrella, a household of that flavor for them to attune to, osmotically normalize, it's the same thing with abundance. If we raise our children not to philosophically believe, but if they are living in the vessel of our containment and that vessel is sponsored by flavors of wealth is easy, it comes easily, love is easy, it comes easily, self-maintenance is easy, watch me embody all these things. So I'm not talking about what we do, but what we are, directly linked to the self-work we're able to cultivate and hold. Then our children will normalize that. Why would that be any different anywhere else?
Yeah. Question is this. You said that we are God having an experience down here, and then I assume we return to or as God when we die or transform. I've experienced this on psychedelics and begged the other gods to let me stay. And also believe this. Does it really matter, the good, the bad, and the ugly, what we do whilst we are down in this insane theme park?
What fascinates me about this question is the premise that this space isn't real and therefore has nothing to offer the divine. Part of the nature of the divine is that it can't be destroyed, that it's infinite, never born, never dies. Let's take that as an accepted truth for the sake of the dialogue. The premise can be like, I'm reminded of the sort of traditional understandings of enlightenment that you're convinced that you are flesh and blood. You're convinced that you are an extension of something organic alone. And you experience and experience and experience until you awaken more and more across lifetimes and start to ponder bigger truths and work out your own true nature and work out that this was all just a wonderful playground for you to self-realize, for you to God-realize. And that's an exquisite process to outline. That's an exquisite thing to have been mapped out by humanity. Let's say that the spiritual component of humanity has mapped that out or something like that. Now, both on a collective and an individual basis, once that's realized, it can start to look and feel like this space actually doesn't matter. This space is actually not truth, not it, not us, not me, not you, not. And essentially, or potentially, not valuable. And to me, it's like that. This is just a simulation. Nothing here really matters. The purpose of it is to simply exist so that we can awaken back to God. And as if like that roller coaster ride was so intense that we never stopped to pause and wonder what was the point of getting on the roller coaster in the first place. If you're a God who takes the roller coaster ride of forgetting they're a God so that they can remember, you literally just went on a ride to go on a ride. And there's no pausing and valuing whether the ride was fun. A lot of the traditional vernacular is around it being, the karmic wheel experiencing discomfort, displeasure, not self. And so it's sort of painted in this negative way. So now we've got a roller coaster that we just get on just to get on. And actually it's not that comfortable. It's actually really intense and kind of shitty. So the question begs, like, what's the point of it? I was God before, I'm God after. What does this earthly plane actually offer in that context? And I think that some of the tension in between, let's say, New Age and traditional spiritual movements is that it can be as if the New Age is willing to say, no, it's this human part of it is incredibly and impeccably valuable. And as if the traditional part is saying it's not really, it's there to be awoken from and left behind, a method that we dispose of kind of thing. I think if you peer back through the traditional rhetoric stuff, you can see a lot of alluding to in the sense of the word being spelled with an E. The E or an A?
E, yeah.
Yeah. Alluding to the majesty of this space as well. I think it's there as well. This has actually been a deeply intimate personal process for me of going, shit, there's so much overlooked in the traditional paths that I come from. And then looking back over it, actually seeing some friends who still belong to that and are radiant embodiments of love now, not stuck in dogma, living beautifully human and spiritual lives all at once, and yet drawing largely from traditional understandings. It's like, well, maybe it was me that just missed all that. Either way, I think it's okay to coexist with some of this dichotomy and not need to answer it. So me not requiring myself to offer an answer right there. But this sort of paradigm of the traditional seeing this as just a simulation to be shed, versus the newer holding of going like, well, no, there's incredible beauty here. That's the pretext to the question answering. What I would offer is that who we really are is ravenously, joyously looking for new ways to explore its own landscapes, because it is so fun for it to do that, for God to realize its own infinity, its own wonder is so fun. So it invents a space where it's possible to be God and to experience not God all at once, as if there's a canvas of white and we're just painting white over the top of it over and over again and marveling at how majestic white is, and then going, we're running out of ways to appreciate white against white. And in really important ways, let's say that white can't exist without black and different shades. So black brings so much value to white because now you can actually see it. It's so exponentially expansive and value bringing that black is actually white. Without black, we can't really see white. And so black brings so much value to white. It almost doesn't exist without it. And so black actually is white. So the invitation would be whatever value you see in the divine and experience in every cell of your body in a moment of alignment, attunement, and an experience of your true nature, of your higher self, of the God that lives in you as you, that whatever value you can peer into yourself and find there, which is ecstatic and wonderful, and the birthright of all of us, whatever value you can find there exists also in the world as the world, because it exists to enhance and value give. Why? Because it's inherently joyous. So what was the question, Polly? Does anything down here actually matter if we're all gods anyway?
Yeah.
It matters imminently. It matters immensely to the actual value of those gods, of our divine essence. It's a long way around to talk about a pretty basic thing, but to be honest, the first bit felt kind of clunky and like a road to get there. But
You rode to get there?
like a road to get
Oh,
there.
right. You're like,
Yeah, what comes up for you?
my understanding of it's really simple. It's basically two things. One, if you think it matters, it does, and if you don't think it matters, it doesn't. But the other thing would be the matter, whether it matters or not, is directly proportionate to the value that you can create here for the experience of yourself, and therefore through you all of creation. Because this is a playground and this is a place of experience, so it's a place of unfoldment, and in that way it matters greatly what you do, because there's great value in that. Back at Godhead, sure, maybe it doesn't matter, but we are here, you find yourself here, and so that to me naturally implies that there is purpose for you to be here, but only if you can create the purpose for you to be here. There is no purpose if you can't see it. So, yeah, it does matter what you do here, and it doesn't. And which path you choose is totally up to you.
Yeah. Do you actually believe, I mean, I just gave a very similar but distinctly different in some ways.
Yeah.
Because you're
same
offering
way of saying the same thing.
Sort of, but also
of
you're leaving the door open for it doesn't affect Godhead in any way, and that you could live a full life just by entertaining the joy of your individuality here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you actually believe that it's possible to have a pure experience like that and it not inform something? Do you actually believe that God could be independent of your experience here?
It's a strange one, because I feel like we're trying to define infinity.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I have the capacity to truly embody and answer that question, because I'm not developed enough.
Perhaps it.
But what I mean is, if you're everything that ever was and ever will be, then it doesn't matter, because this has already all been experienced, because you're everything that ever was and ever will be. But at the same time, here you are. And therefore, if you wish to make purpose in this experience, then you can. And so for that reason, for the experience and the joy and the unfoldment of this existence, it can matter to you. I don't know, is that any clearer?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's a little more non-dualist, I think. It's allowing for more neutrality. Mine has a charge of love and intentionality. And I think it is true at once that it's all already here.
Well, God can't be destroyed,
and there's also
and it can't
value
be...
in exploring it.
Yeah.
And that's not a thing I'm choosing. That's a thing that feels like I am. Like I don't know, like my body is made of flesh. It's a thing that's just there. I am inclined towards love. I don't choose that. It's my very nature. And it's obvious to me, it's our very nature. And when you talk about the unfoldment, that feels like our very nature as well. And so, yeah, like a tree grows. It simply does.
Yeah. But yet we get to be intentional with that unfoldment.
Because one of our versions of a tree growing is creativity. But it's also true, and maybe this is where that sort of infinite neutrality re-enters on my side of the fence, is that while we are making discretional decisions over which way to steer the ship of the artistic expression of the masterpiece of self that we are, somehow as the canvas keeps getting bigger and more complex and diverse and more beautiful, that it's also true that everything we've already experienced is informing the decisions that we make. So that dichotomy, is there free will or are things predestined? I think that both and neither are quite vibrantly alive. That's what I'm saying. It's re-entering as...
Yeah.
Yeah. Question for you, Paul. What is your definition of spirituality?
Of spirituality?
Yeah. What's your definition of spirituality? Right down the middle.
Yeah, okay. My definition of spirituality is probably very simple. And that is that it is a way of life. It's really simple. It's a way of living. So you get to I've said this before, put a line on the horizon, try and see what your highest aspiration is for yourself. Get in your boat, put a rudder in the water, and start heading towards that. And for me, you then have a metric, so you're making your way towards your highest ideal of yourself and your aspirations for yourself. And then you have a metric to which you can align everything in your life. What is your highest ideal for yourself? And it's that simple. Because for me, I've always been a very, I wouldn't say pessimistic. I've always been a realist. I've always been quite a realist as a human for whatever reason. And so for a lot of flowery spirituality, probably more the New Age stuff, it really just did not turn me on at all. And in fact, I think it had a negative effect. It actually created a cynicism in me for a long time. And even now, still sometimes, like when you go into those kind of more exalted spaces that you're, whether you're channeling information or whatever it is, it's like sometimes I feel it. I still feel it in me. That thing.
The cynicism?
Yeah, sometimes like, oh, that can't. What are you?
This fucking guy.
But then it's beautiful. But then it's beautiful because I get to see it again, and I get to then just relax it.
Wow.
And I get to let it go, and just go, hey, anything is possible, right? Oh yeah, it is. That guy knows that. That guy knows. The guy that's a cynic also knows that anything's possible. So that character, that piece of me, can let go of, and it's a defense mechanism. It's a defense mechanism of not understanding, of being afraid, and that doesn't exist in my life anymore. And so for me, I've rock and rolled a few ideas and a few ideologies, and the one that seems to be bulletproof to me is that we are all pieces of God here incarnate in meat puppets to unfold and experience not being God. And it's really simple. So spirituality for me is a way of life, a way to live your life. Because I think without it, it's really hard. I think life without spirituality it's hard to have no way of life. What do you believe in? What nourishes your soul? Nothing. It's like, oh, that sounds really hard. And maybe I'm wrong. I'm happy to be wrong. But even not having a way of life is also a way of life. You know what I mean? And you look at nihilism, or you look at that's still a spirituality. It's a belief system. I believe in nothing. Yeah, but you still believe in it, don't you? So everyone believes in something. I was afraid of dying. I think we've had this chat on the podcast when I was about 7 or 8, maybe older, maybe 10. I realized I was going to die, and I'd cry myself to sleep. And then I had this beautiful realization in my 20s that I was romanticizing the melancholy of the nothingness of death. And the truth of it is that I cannot know and do not know. And therefore I must walk that middle path of not knowing. And there's a freedom in that, because then I get to choose what nourishes my life. And I'm like, reincarnation feels way better in my body. It sedates the feeling of panic and fright and anxiousness, et cetera, et cetera. So why wouldn't you live more in that space? Because it allows you, or allows me, I'm talking about myself, it allows me a more fulfilling, calm, beautiful, deeply connected experience. And then everything flowers out from that. Everything comes further from that. Whereas if I was previously, I was living in a negative space, and I was miserable. So even if this is the one life that I have, I was making it miserable.
Yeah.
And so I have a conscious choice to not make it miserable by defining what I believe in, my way of life, my spirituality. And that for me was a very powerful realization.
Wow. In listening to it, kind of letting it run through me, it's like saying I was living a life. I concede that I must live this life, and this is the most loving way I've found to do it. I've got to do it anyway. I might as well do it with as much love as I can. And I don't actually need to know that I know. I don't need to know that this is the absolute truth.
Yeah, kind of.
It's the most loving way I have to do it. Anyway.
I live like it is my truth.
Yeah.
And it's become my truth.
Yeah, there you go.
Because the groove in that record groove thing that we talk about is so deep in me now. It just resonates as a constant truth. Yeah.
Wow. That's beautiful, bro. But you're filling your cup up. And eventually your cup begins to overflow. And it's as if, in a more functional way, I used to think about this when I would drive to work early in my career, and it was an intense workplace, and there was a lot of intense people that were there, beautiful people, my family, but complex, just like every group of human beings, but perhaps overrepresented in the sort of crisis manager space that I was one of those people, is sort of an intense, maybe alpha kind of personality was quite prevalent, and there was lots of tensions around the workplace, and then we were going and doing really tense things. And I think that was the real reason that there was so much tension, was because we were stepping in and out of crisis for a living. Anyway, it meant that it was an intense place for me to go, a place I loved, but quite intense. So I would meditate for like a sneaky couple of minutes in my car before I'd come in. And it was a wonderful functional thing to avail myself of, because it created routine. What I started to notice in a kind of a felt and ethereal, maybe metaphorical, but it felt like it was something that was actually happening. My car became a sacred place that I would, I don't know about be reluctant to leave, but I felt safe in the morning, and at the end of the shift, I felt eager to sit back in there and just breathe while the car warmed up again. And it was as if the car was like a cup that filled up with beautiful energy. You could call it calm. You could call it like the homeliness of like an innate Luke energy signature that I was cultivating, like a relationship with myself. Whatever it was a net positive, and that positivity would fill up the car space and then overflow. More and more it would span and fill up other areas of my life. Never filling my entire life, of course, because there's always contrasts and lumps and bumps to digest and grow from. But yeah, the cup would fill and the cup would overflow, and it actually felt real, like it was happening from my car in that instance. So I mention all that to say, like, my relationship to what is spirituality has changed a lot over time as that cup has filled up and spilled into all these different rooms of my life. And it's actually difficult to then pin, what does it mean? What did it mean? So it used to mean, it's definitely meant a way to anchor myself into love in my life, to find myself amongst the complexity and the messy bits of life, to find myself, to give purpose and all those things. And now it's quite normalized in all areas of my life. Parenting, vocation, all relationships. Certainly purpose, certainly the quiet relationship to myself. This is easily the hardest question I've been asked out of these questions, to give an authentic answer. So instead I'm explaining why it's hard to give an authentic answer, why it's changed. Yeah. I suppose what keeps percolating up in maybe a more superficial layer is this is an opportunity. Spirituality to me is a window to get to know yourself. And you aren't just a set of psychological tendencies. You run very, very deep. To an end that doesn't exist. And spirituality is a wonderful vehicle to be able to traverse those things in whatever form it might take. I probably could have just said that, eh?
It's really nice. I like it.
Okay, yeah.